Mentioned in the telephone conversation, necessity, warning, that's lacquer thinner. Wiped the ruler off one day with lacquer thinner, and the numbers on it, I bought, this was bought by GA and given to me as a gift, and it wiped the numbers off the ruler. So don't use lacquer thinner. This one, I think I bought it at Lowe's. Anyway, this is a real good device for laying track because it gives you, it's a section of track long and it'll let you do it. I'll maybe make up a tape and demonstrate how to use it laying track. But I just put this down here for reference. Track centers on that, between that other one is basically 3-inch. So there's your 3-inch track centers and here's your 2-inch track centers. So if you want to get an idea, the first 2 tracks are on 2-inch track centers, and 2 to 3 is 3-inch track centers. We talked about that on the phone. So when you get up here and you want to do something like this, if you want to get into the finished work or whatever you do, that gives you the option. And what we talked about, putting your hands in between things to pick things up and to work cars, particularly in tight areas, that's a good example. As I said, this is an Atlas switch right here. It's a 563 or 4, I don't know which one, because it's a right-hand switch. The part of it, these right in here are all Atlas switches. Get into later once you get to laying track or anything, if you decide to start this part of the track right here. The rails have been painted and all in preparation for ballasting. They haven't been ballasted. These rails in here and track has been ballasted and painted and everything on the sides. So you get the better one. One of the things that comes into play, and this is a fully ballasted and painted switch right here. Probably use a little bit more ballast right there. The camera tells all. That's a good trick too while you're building your railroad. Stop, take pictures, go look at them on the computer. It'll show up everything you forgot to do and you'll say, oh, gee, there it is. Little grade crossing here. You know, everything runs over here into the big street. Oh, the aisle. Yeah, okay. You got the idea. We only modeled the railroad on here. That's it. If it doesn't have anything to do with the railroad, you're not going to see it. There's no towns. Towns are all located, like I said, right out here. You're seeing it. That's where the road runs to, middle of town. Anyway, you can handle that one any way you want to. It's great hobby. You can just do anything you want. But these are all Atlas switches. Fast tracks may be the way you got to go because I don't think you get it. One thing about the Atlas system in using it all, that's a 19.5 degree crossover with the 5, 6. These are 2 a left and a right, 563, 564 switch. And the little piece of Atlas track, which you can buy already pre-cut, you end up with a nice setup for the industries. This hadn't been scenic yet, to feed the tracks for the industry. Makes it a little bit more interesting, unique switching opportunity, so on and so forth. So that's just talking about the switches. I talk about cookie cutting, and this is a great example. If you go look on the web page, you'll see this area before that scenery there, and that is styrofoam and Calcoat 127 was put in. This is No Name City. It was kind of an afterthought thrown in as I was building because I decided I needed to break up this big long straight run of scenery. It is one of the problems that you run into, a lot of straight sections in this particular railroad. The building's 50 feet long, but the objective here was to get as long a run as I can. But one other thing it does service is that little 4-inch difference in height right there. When the guy, this in the background is called Apex Industrial, and it's nothing but a switching area. That's an ethanol plant, grain elevator, food processing, the coal storage, the cattle plant, Burns Wright Match Companies down there, the aggregate company, the LP gas company, the pulp, the grinded up for the wood chip companies there. So we got a lot of activity here in Apex Industrial, and this is a job during the operating sessions. It's a branch job, and you also get another train. The ethanol grain train comes through here and works the ethanol plant along with the branch line job. So you got an endless amount of things. It's just your basic grid bench work. I can't get any more basic than this. You know, this is 18 inches up here, second level. Now, you realize this building was built for this railroad, so it was all kind of figured out what we were going to do. So we just screwed the 2.5-inch screws right into through the sheetrock into the wall, and you can see one of those right there. The top screw has a washer on it because if there's any height situation where any pressure is going to be put on to pull back, it's going to be at the top. There's no gussets, no lateral bracing or anything. That's the only thing that's holding that up there. And that's 18 inches. That's 1x4. And you can see the piece, the 1x2, that's a 1x2 added on top of the 1x4 to create the elevation right here. Now, I'm 5'11", and so I'm almost, this would be exactly level with my eyesight. I'm level with what I can see at 5'11". I can tell you that where my finger is right there is 60 inches off the floor. So the idea was that this is a branch line and you want to see the train and you want to see what's behind it, so we raised it up basically 2 inches. So when the trains pass in front, the stuff in the back is still visible. People like to see the trains. We all like to see the trains. That's what it's all about. So this section right here is 18 inches deep. Remember I talked about cutting plywood and what you end up over with? So piece of plywood's 4 feet wide, right? Okay, so that's 30 inches wide. That's 18 inches wide. 30 from 48 leaves you just what you need for up here, okay? So some of this got great logic to it, okay? That was an old car card box. There ain't no more car cards on this railroad. We modified the car card boxes, took the centerpieces out, and that's where the clipboards go for the manifest now. Even put a little piece of wood in there so the clipboard stands more straight up so they don't lean back into the engines. So that gives you kind of idea about the construction. To get this elevation right here, all I did was put a 1x3 on top of a 1x4 in the back, and you can see the 1x3 on top of the 1x4. Drill all of your pilot holes for all of your wiring and your cross pieces outside with a spade bit before you put it together. Now, on this section we have a brace. That 30 inches, you can't hang it off the wall without some kind of a brace. Now, that's staging yards down there. And the bracing goes back. We got the, we got the big level back there that stopped me. It's notched out and it's sitting on the piece that ties to that. Now, there's a brace, and you can see it on the web page, Grande Pacific, Grande Pacific Model RR.org. But there's another brace that goes to a cleat on the wall for the bottom piece. But there, you can literally, I could take everything out of the room that's on the floor and pull the carpet and replace it, and it wouldn't have to touch the railroad. The railroad is hung on the wall. Now, you know, that's not probably what you're going to do. That's why I said, look at I got a bunch of pictures I found on Jeff's. So what is cookie cutting? That's cookie cutting. Laid all the plywood out flat, and I have a lot of pictures about this. And then I cut it. And this end right here, that's a big trestle, and that'll be, you will not be able to see where I'm shooting right now. You won't be able to see that wall when I get finished with the scenery. Now, this side of the room is pretty well finished, but again, the height difference. The train comes down here through Rock Ridge, and it continues on into the turnaround, which is, you know, railroads run into this. I know you're not going to have this situation, but it goes into the tunnel. Well, this is a 36-inch radius turn on the outside here. And it's in a corner, so, you know, we're going down the whole length. Sorry. We're going down a whole length here and coming back around to the point where the railroad gets back to 30 inches in depth. So the back part's elevated one. It protects the trains from getting knocked off in the front, and it gives the person operating the back a clear definition of his part of the world. As I say in a couple of my videos, you're 100 miles from here. You know, that track and this track is hundreds of miles apart. So, got to do what you got to do to make this whole thing work. So, a little bit different scenario, but this is the town of Rock Ridge, and if you watch all the videos, you'll get a better understanding. And I'm sure you've seen the movie Blazing Saddles, so you know where the name comes from. And that's for Chris. We keep Chris's engines on here. We gotta have some, you know, representation. The only thing you won't see on this railroad, and there's no locomotives, and only a very, very few cars, is the ugly Pacific. So what can I say? Anyway, it's some of the points about the railroad that I think covers aspects that you're going to want to do. The 15/32 plywood. This is 15/32 fir plywood. I call it furniture. It's not birch plywood, but it's fir grade, and one side is completely finished. The reason why I pick it is because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. Standard 15/32 plywood comes 4. It's gonna be difficult to work with, and usually the stuff is harder than the nails you're using, so good reason to stay away from it. Let me get over here. I got to show you one other thing. Inch and 5/8 coarse wood screw. Okay, they don't make them 1.5 inches. Sorry. Okay, that's why I told you about the little piece at the end. When you put two pieces of 3/4 inch wood together, screw them up, you're going to end up with that piece sticking out. You can get a pair of dikes and cut it off if you want to, or just remember, don't go sticking your hands around underneath the layout without looking. You can get them in boxes like this, and they come in various lengths. You will absolutely need 1.25 inches. I use 1.25 inches to screw the 1/2 inch plywood to the top of the 1x4s, and then 1 5/8 inches to screw the two together. that about covers the screw thing. The track nails. Oh, okay, let's go on to the track nails. If we go over to the Model Railroad Jeff's Salvage Yard, and since this is a model railroad, you would find model railroad track nails, track spikes in the salvage yard, right? That's just what you would find, okay? It's like you find used rail in the gonds, and we have an old engine cab, you know, some steel support beams on the side of a flat car, and of course we have the crushed up metal. So anyway, that's the track nails I talked about using. And remember, when you being big on photography, understand this. When you look down that track, you don't see any nail heads sticking up. We'll show you what it looks like with the nail heads. So that's a piece of track that's just been put in place, and the nails are all still there. And you can see down the track where they are. Once I've painted, and I use a brown paint that matches the ties. It's latex. I had it made up at Lowe's to match those ties, and just use a brush, a regular plain paint brush, artist brush, to paint the rails. Paint them up good. Paint all the ties, everything, doesn't make any difference. And then take a wet rag, wipe off top of the rails, let it all dry, polish the rails back up, and you're back in business. And here's the finished results. Those were all just painted with a brush. And you gotta paint the rails. Man, geez, all the shiny rails on videos I see from various people. Huh. Well, those people have only been sitting there. A young lady's got that skirt on. No, okay, well, we'll get to that. Sidetracked again. So, one other thing about this, and this is the standard railroad cork. I take a rotary sander, glue it down with white glue, let it dry, come back the next day, take a rotary sander, and you see those edges, they've all been sanded off. No rough edges sticking out. Got a video on my website of the Brandywine and Benedictine Railroad. Hand-laid switches and ties and track. And he just used the regular cork ballast. And I don't think he plans on ballasting it. Now, I've got a close of it. It's worth looking at. It's something to consider. Very neat. But he did the same thing. He sanded that cork off with the rotary sander with about 80 grit sandpaper to make all those edges. And it also saves you a lot of ballast. This is an example here of the cork. And where we have a transition right there on the center track. The sheets of cork that I cut down, I went over to the Hobby Lobby, I talked to about it, and this is the 5/64 inch cork right here. Because it was going all the way down, it's straight, it's not going to bend, so, and eventually, as you saw down there in front of the station, you're not going to see any of this. So I ended, then when we get to a point where we're going to have curves, we start back up with the regular thing. And here again, this is where the rotary sander comes in, because the standard railroad cork, two-piece cork, is a little bit higher. So when you get it all glued down and in place before you start putting your track down, you run that rotary sander in here and you kind of bevel this off till it matches this. So it all looks real nice and level. Okay? So, and then you see as it goes, the track starts bending off down thing, and we don't need all that cork anyway. Run along there. Now, another thing about things, if you plan on ballasting, and I don't care what color ballast you pick, Now, these are motorized switches, and again, we discussed that. I would not get into that. If I were you, you don't need them, but this was supposed to be all controlled by the dispatcher. This is the main line. But you do need to do this, because you don't want to put a whole lot of ballast around your switches. So if you're going with various colors, you want to paint before you put the switch in place, you want to paint around all the areas where you're going to have light ballast to match the ballast. And as you can see down there, I use, cinders and crushed volcanic rock, so it's a lot of black in it. So that's so you don't end up with having a lot of ballast in around the places that gives you fits. So just a little reason why you see that paint to the light. Now, if you're going to use gray ballast, and you want to get a gray and put it there, that would be the preferable choice. We'll put this up on a video and put it on the YouTube for you, and you can keep it as a point of reference. We'll post this available for everybody. So warning, put the link down somewhere where you can keep it. As far as this fascia, don't go there. This is an expensive route to go. This is regular, baseboard fascia, 4.5 inches tall. It has now gotten very expensive since when I started this. I would just cut pieces of masonite, rip them. You can go to Home Depot, buy a sheet of masonite, and then tell them you want it to rip it 4 inches, 5 inches, whatever you want to do with the fascia, and then come put it on. There's all kind of little neat things you can do to attach it to makes it look real professional. And of course, you're not going to have any controls if other than things like this. This is a UTP panel. We will have some of these around, but that's about it. Maybe a couple of those to hold your controllers, and maybe some place to put things in, whatever you do for control purposes, however you're going to run a railroad. Just so you will know, these are boat cup holders. Came out of marine business. Richard Sackett came by here one day, gave me 2 of them. Somebody saw it, and somebody came over and he gave me 2, and then somebody gave me a Christmas gift last year, Paul Coates. He said, here, I got about 10 of them. So he brought me things. Great for having around to hold your Coke can so they don't get knocked around. And you think it's you're doing that for the guests. Well, believe me, you're going to find out I was the biggest vendor. So I'm the one that uses them, so that's why they're there. So we have them spotted around on the various things you can do. How many, whether you don't even want to think about various levels at this point.